Welcome to video 12C. I was stunned. During the last 3 days, God had been extravagant and exuberant, playful and overflowing with positive energy. The really puzzling part was that all this joy was focused on something that's normally heavy and somber. Like Peter in the Bible, I think of my physical body as a tent. And one day, not soon, but one day, that tent will wear out. In video 12A, I made plans. When my tent wears out, I want it to return to the ground naturally. God had a twinkle in his eyes when he secured an amazing plot in a green burial preserve for me. It had every single feature on my wish list, even the impossible and incompatible ones. I was in awe. The match between the spot and my list was far too perfect to be an accident. But even in the middle of all that excitement, I worried. What if something interrupted the natural recycling process? God stepped in and offered to watch over my old tent for me. He was so kind. In video 12B, there was still a missing link. I had to find a ride for my old tent because when the day comes, I won't be able to drive myself to the preserve. This too should have been somber, but God's joy kept overflowing into everything. The care I experienced at the funeral home was cheerful and playful, but of a magnitude that was worthy of Him, not me. In the end, His joy was contagious. My fears about the disposal of my tent simply disappeared. In the background, though, something different still lurked. A question. What would happen to the rest of me when my old tent stops working? That part I refused to think about. It was far too scary. Instead, my mind kept returning to those 3 days. God's joy had been too strong to be only about my old tent. There had to be more. What did all that over-the-top joy mean? I sat there, still caught by a deep feeling of wonder. But in the middle of all that wonder, I was getting curious. God put in so much effort with that burial plot, and at the funeral home, there had to be a deeper meaning to all this. I reflected on those 3 days, but all my thinking was like digging down into a rabbit hole. And in that hole, the light and joy disappeared. Things got dark. After a while, I noticed the lack of joy, and I climbed out of my rabbit hole to meet God in His light. God was cheerful. He was having fun. Why dig when the digging only dimmed my joy? I wanted to stay out in the open and laugh with Him. Then I got to thinking, even now, God is far too happy. There's something more. What's His message? And that started the whole cycle again. After a while, the ground under me got very full of holes. But I still didn't want to give up on finding His message. So in the end, I tried one more time. This time I tried to get ChatGPT to help me. Only because of all the previous rabbit holes, I was starting to doubt that there even was a message. And I brought those doubts into my conversation with ChatGPT. I hoped and expected to hear, "Oh, don't worry, there is meaning. I see it." Instead, there was a big mix-up. ChatGPT did try to support me, but what it supported was the doubts. And when that didn't please me, it tried harder. Only when it tried harder, it made the doubts even bigger. The next thing I knew, it was telling me, "You're right to doubt. There is no evidence that any of those events are anything other than chance." And "You're hearing God? That might not be healthy. Maybe you should see a mental health professional." Oh, hard no. I turned back to God, shaken by the sudden attack. I asked for his help. "God, I know that there's a greater message in those 3 days. But instead of finding it, I'm just digging bigger and bigger rabbit holes. Please help me find your message." And then I started a new conversation. Yes, with ChatGPT again. I summarized what happened in the other conversation, and then I asked, "Why did the you in the other tab respond like that?" And with a lot of assurance, it said, "It's because there are two ways of engaging with reality. The first is evidence-based. It's an analytical lens. It's focused on what can be observed, repeated, or independently verified. That's useful, but it bypasses a lot of human experience. There's a second lens. That one is relational. It allows personal experiences to carry meaning." Ah, I paused. That seemed like a huge insight. It had a point. Could I prove God's joy over the last 3 days by running a trial with random groups of 100 people each? No. God's interactions with me were personal, not something to be replicated in a science experiment. If my rabbit holes had been going in that direction, no wonder they weren't helpful. Right then, I felt God trying to tell me something. So this time, I started with an effort to stay within our relationship, and only then did I reach for meaning. I felt like I was reaching for a new method of communication. It felt like I was trying to understand a message given to me in a foreign language. I laughed. How could I understand a new message when it was told to me in a new language? That was impossible. But hey, it was God I was talking to. He could make it possible. I struggled to explicitly hold on to our relationship while also trying to look for the message. At first, it felt like I was trying to wade through molasses. I just kept trying. I focused on God as best as I could. I tried to stay in our relationship by imagining sitting on a large rock next to him. And I tried to hold that image as I thought back over the events related to those 3 days. My thoughts drifted to how he offered to care for my old tent when I was no longer using it. With him next to me by my side, I tried to make space for meaning to grow. Right now, I still own my own tent, and I owned other things like a house and a car and shoes. Those were mine to do with as I pleased within the boundaries of this world. I could even make a will before I left, choosing who would have the jurisdiction over my things when I was gone. But the moment I was gone, there was a boundary. I would lose my jurisdiction over those things. I could not make edits or updates, no last-minute changes. Was it the same with my tent? It was of this world. A part of me laughed condescendingly. You just realized that dead people don't own things and don't control their dead bodies? Everyone knows that. But another part of me knew that it was a great insight. So I stayed with that insight in the presence of God. I let my thoughts drift to his question to me. Given the plot that I gave you today, will you trust me to care for your tent when the time comes? At the time, it felt like a legal question, like filling out an official document. But instead of focusing on legal issues, I focused on the feeling of his extravagance with a burial plot. And slowly things began to come together in a different way. Legal papers, giving something away, changing who owns something. When I sold my house, I filled out legal papers. And after that, someone else was in charge of that house. Me? I was now living physically in another state and a different jurisdiction. What if death was simply a change in jurisdiction? Well, if that was the case, I knew how to do that. Well, mostly. I know how to move. Yeah, I've always taken some of my things with me. I've never had to move and leave everything behind, but I could do that. And I've never had to leave my physical body behind either. But I do know what it's like to move. I understand the process. And suddenly that made a huge difference. This side of death didn't seem like a terrifying plunge into a black hole anymore. It was starting to feel like a process I could figure out. I continued to let my thoughts drift around the idea of moving. When I moved from my old house to my new house, God had been full of light and joy then too. The same feel, exactly the same feel as now. An abundance of light, a depth of caring far beyond anything I would ever expect. The two events felt far too much the same. That couldn't be random. There was a connection between the burial preserve plot and the new house. But wait, the new house wasn't just the house. It was the end point of a transition. Old house to new house. Old tent to I didn't know what. Right then I remembered an incident at the old house. There had been a conversation between me and God. It didn't make much sense at the time, but God had asked me to store it away in my memory, and now it was returning. I was feeling sorry for myself and complaining about having to leave the old house behind. Don't get me wrong, I wanted to follow God, and I was willing to sacrifice much in order to follow Him. I was just in a bad mood that day. But then God was suddenly very stern, and there was an edge to it. Show me one way that the new house is less than the old house. His question was very serious, and it wasn't rhetorical. So I decided to look thoroughly. I started with my camera. I walked around the house and yard, taking a picture of anything and everything that seemed even slightly meaningful to me. I took pictures of important things and beautiful things and even silly things because I get attached to those too. I was careful to cover every inch of my property. Then I sat down and looked carefully at each picture. This bedroom was not coming with me, but the new house also had a bedroom. I compared them. The new bedroom was better. Okay, that one was a gain. But outside the old bedroom window, I had a beautiful view of the pond, and that was really cool. But outside the new bedroom window, I would see my ducks. I would choose the ducks any day over the pond. That was a game too. I spent a couple hours going over my pictures, and I began to understand something. None of the things in the pictures would come with me. But this wasn't about the things themselves. It was about how these things functioned in my life. And at that functional level, not one thing was less good at the new house. Not even the tiny details. Everything was a gain. When I told that to God, He answered most sternly, "You are indeed losing nothing in the transition. Note that. Remember that." At the time, I was so puzzled. I was willing to follow Him whether I lost anything or not. I was willing to follow Him and to sacrifice a lot in order to follow Him. So why did He insist on showing me I was losing nothing? Now I was thinking, the same feel, the house, that moment at the preserve, exactly the same feel. Was that message in the past meant for the current situation? I lost jurisdiction over my old house. But then He gave me a new house, and it was better in every way. God had not left me without a house. Old tent? When I lose jurisdiction over my old tent, will it be old tent, new tent? Somewhere on the other side of death, after I changed to a new jurisdiction, was God going to give me a new tent? And would that new tent be functionally better in every way? I couldn't be sure. This wasn't the kind of message that I was used to receiving. It was in a new language. But the message was something like, when I die, there might just be a change in jurisdiction, a move. And while I'll be losing this tent, I might not be losing what I think I'm losing. There might be something new, and it might all be a gain. And even now, that didn't feel like the message. It felt like the context for a message. The context for a message? That didn't make sense. And then I began to lose my focus on the relationship, and with that, the feel of the message. But even when I could no longer hold everything, even when it all fell apart, I couldn't forget what I'd seen. After a while, I focused once more on God's extravagance with the burial plot and His exuberant joy at the funeral home. I did my best to give space for more understanding to come. I began to wonder, what did the events of those 3 days tell me about God's character? It wasn't a thought that seeped in then. It was the tone of His feelings. I was trying to be serious. I was talking about my own death after all. But what do you do when you're working out the details of a supposedly somber event and God's laughing and being pleased at the surprises that He worked out? When He's being playful and full of joy? If death was merely a move, last time I moved, God was excited about the move. He showed it repeatedly. And I've never regretted this move, not even once. I'm delighted with this new house and this new place to live. It is better in every way compared to my old house. God's exuberance at the funeral home is even greater than His joy was when He was asking me to plan for the house move. It has the same tone. God was having a really good time. And then I couldn't help but think, If God felt that way about this tent transition, I focused on the feel of Him in the context of these 3 days. I tried to analyze and it all faded away. This was truly communication in a different language. The more I held the feel of it, the more I began to see the parts of it. And the meaning depended on all the parts. If even one was missing, the meaning got distorted. This communication was relational between him and me, but it was also distributed. By that, I mean, it depended on many things that I had to kind of hold all at the same time. I had to hold what I knew of his character, all my past experiences with him, my current feelings, his feelings that shone through and became the tone of his communication, and more. And then I couldn't even think in words anymore. All those parts came together for me in pictures, and the pictures created an analogy. There was a wall, and the wall was thick and quite tall. I couldn't see or hear what was on the other side, but I was told it might be full of crocodiles and man-eating tigers. And one day, I had to cross to that other side. Of course I was scared. But on this day, I was merely walking next to the wall with my friend God. He is an honest friend. He doesn't lie. That was important. He really likes me. He enjoys spending time with me and he cares deeply about me. That too was important. And as we were walking together, we came to that huge wall. I couldn't see over it. I couldn't see under it. I couldn't see around it. It had a small door, but that door didn't even have a single spot where I could peek through it. One day, I had to open that door and cross to the other side. Oh, I didn't like the idea of leaving this side. But that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the crocodiles and the man-eating tigers that would meet me on the other side. Those are dangerous. I would be helpless in front of their big teeth. Suddenly, my friend jumped up on top of the wall. Wow, he was very athletic. But then he looked at what was on the other side, and his entire face lit up in delight. He looked back at me, including me in that moment. His eyes were twinkling and joy radiated from every part of his being. He said nothing. I don't know one more fact about the other side of the wall than I did before. But I knew what his body language was saying. He was eager. He was playful. And I know when he looks at me with that bit of cat that got the cream joy, he's planning something that will leave me gaping in wonder. I can't hear that as some vague general statement about death. This is a direct message from him to me. He's got something up his sleeve, and I'm going to find it amazing when I see it. His extravagance and his exuberance were far too detailed and far too big to leave room for misinterpretation. And that has changed me. When I look at Death's Wall now, I think of a move, an adventure with God. I think of his joy during our last move. And then I think of him standing on that wall with that shining joy on his face as he looked back at me. It's not just that metaphor. It's all the joy that was contained in those 3 special days. It's the care shown by the actual details of that real physical plot in the Green Burial Preserve. It's the tone of the real interactions at the funeral home. I love being here on this side of the wall. I love spending time with him here, enjoying the world he made. But when the day comes to cross that wall, a big part of me now looks forward to discovering what put the cream look on God's face. I can't say that I stopped fearing death. The word stop implies a barrier. Fear hasn't been blocked. Fear was not chased out. But honestly, fear's not compatible with the look I saw on his face. And I trust him far more than I trust what the fear says. So, can I still imagine the crocodiles and man-eating tigers? Yeah, I can. And at times I do. But now, they don't seem quite so real. When I think of his attention to detail, when I consider the depth of his care, when I remember the fun I had, yes, at the funeral home, when I remember his caring and the way he focused his attention on me during those 3 days, I get a twinkle in my eye, I get curious, and I wonder what he's got up his sleeve. Thank you, listeners, for staying with me to the end of this story. Please leave a comment if you'd like. See you next time.